everyone. Yes, morning my time, because that's the only time that matters. All you people in Germany, I don't care. I don't care. You're not in a real time zone. But it is morning for me, barely by about an hour. But not for David, our producer, our lovely God, who everyone's spoken with for ages, and the lovely Cheshire, who's up there somewhere north as well. Look at her. She's all bundled up. I am down here in California sweating my cojones off, and she's sitting there like in this parka. And I'm like, are you crazy? I
Not
don't get it. I
McCrazy
don't
enough.
understand. But anyways, yes, we are
I
back.
gotta show
New
you guys
intro.
my.
What does it say? Okay. I'm not going to read that because I told you I don't want to get demonetized in the first minute. Although I've got some mugs too, so I'll show you. Look at so I got your design, right? So that's yours. So I got smug, the improved version of Smitty. Smitty kind of created it, and then we kind of ran with it. And then I got this a few days ago. This is my Agree to Argue mug.
It's a cool looking
I
design.
love that. Look at that. I mean, that's like it's like
I like the black
burnt
and orange. That is cool.
Yeah, it's almost like Halloween. But anyways, I'm looking forward to doing that show on Wednesday. 11 o'clock Pacific time. We're doing it.
11. So 2.
That would be 2 Eastern. Yes. Yeah, Dr. Fuzzron and I were going to be talking about philosophy and science and theology, and
that's going to be a cool show.
It's going to be really awesome. We started a new channel, and there was a couple of reasons why, and I think it's a good idea. I had a lot of people message me and RTB and a few things, and they said, "Look, we want to watch this, but we don't want to get inundated with on reasons."
There's something to be said for having your shows organized in a way so that way they're not overwhelming for people. And
I'm happy to call in to like Objectively Dan, Truth Wanted. I also like Talk Heath, and I like Eric Murphy. But the other shows on the AC I don't bother with, right? But Objectively Dan was like,
right?
Yeah, I'm not their audience, right? I'm not. They want to talk to theists to try to do their little shtick, and I get that, right? No problem with that. I really don't. Yeah, I did 95% of those intro graphics, but Cheshire's claiming it, so.
Yep. Helios for 2 said, "I've missed this show. Morning, everyone. We've missed you guys
Helios.
too."
Yes, sorry for the fact that I actually did get DMCA'd for my own channel. I must be the first YouTuber in history to ever have that happen, but it did prevent me from streaming for about a month. Yes, I could have streamed on the other channel, the Great Debate Community channel, but it's just I'm not going to move this show over there. I'm not going to move over and under and over there, which we're doing on Wednesdays at 8 Pacific time p.m. with Chris. So
I mean, it would kind of make sense to move them over to the Great Debate Community eventually when you're ready to build that as its own brand. Maybe. It depending on what direction you wanted to take it. Realistically, unless you want the Great Debate Community to be more about like debatey-ish discussions, in which case,
no,
you
I really don't. I think
what you would want to do is you would want to link them together, right? So you would have whatever topic you're talking about on your show, then you would move over to the Great Debate Community for like panel discussions about whatever the topic was.
That I could see, right. I have the main things on here and then the after show stuff and that kind of stuff, panel discussions in the Great Debate. Yeah, it's kind of a mixture of stuff.
People come in and out more.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I play games on that channel. It's kind of like a potpourri of stuff, yeah.
It's kind of like my channel. It's just sort of a catch-all. Or to test out shows and test out topics.
Well, let me ask you this. I did a lot of math stuff a long time ago on the Great Debate Community channel. Like I did some calc videos, and I eventually migrated them over to this channel, and I probably will do them on this channel. But or do you think I should have done the Great Debate Community channel? I don't know. I think this channel works for that kind of stuff. Like I said, I was going to do a college algebra video because people were like, "Let's get back to kind of the basic stuff." So
I like the GDC as a kind of more Wild Westy discussion channel where it's a little bit more freeform, where people can just kind of come in and talk. You just need decent moderators. So not necessarily formal, not necessarily terribly like, I don't want to say not fact-checked. I just mean like not as rigid as what we tend to do. And just it opens up the forum, and if you're using the Discord, you can have people just popping in and out, and you can have like all the pre-approved people, and then if somebody wants to come in, you give them the Discord rather than into the channel, so that way they can't like, porn bomb the channel or whatever.
Hey, Bull, people are saying that they're buffering a little bit. Is that on our end or YouTube?
It's YouTube because I'm looking at it and it's friggin' fine right in front of me. So I was just checking that out.
Yeah, I'm not getting any buffering on my end either. So yeah, we're running at 720p, so that's fine. We don't run in 1080p because I got to tell you, there's just no reason to for what we do unless you're gaming. I don't see a reason to run in 1080p. I remember a non sequitur show that was a big issue that we had. Bull and I were trying to explain to Kyle.
Actually, it isn't. It is 1080p right now, Steve.
Just saying.
Yes.
That's a little high, isn't it? I mean, we don't.
We don't need it. We don't need it, but it's just kind of where my computer's been set for 2 years, so can't really. It's like I have to consciously go in and change that at this point.
Yeah, I have auto, which was on 720p, but you're right, it does let me go to 1080, but it doesn't really notice any difference. So, unless, like I said, you're running games,
we're not showing yeah. 1080p is for like high-end graphic gaming stuff.
Yeah, you're running 60 FPS or 30?
It's 30 actually.
Oh, is it 30? Okay.
That's actually more of a reduction than 1080p to 720p.
Huge.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So as we were talking about the math stuff, so I was going to do basically a college algebra level video. I had a quiz that I found. I did the first 10 problems and broke them all down in labor math. And so I'll be doing that toward the end of the week or towards the weekend. But it's going to be one of those, hey, let's get back to the more basic stuff and start doing math hangouts. And I want to have a mixture, like college algebra, then I'll do like maybe calc videos, and I'll do like, if I can remember anything about trig.
If you're gonna do that, it would be really cool if you did like do it as a series, so that way you're actually like people can actually learn and advance their math. So you do it like break down easier problems, then go into more complicated and like kind of work it up, so that way people can essentially take like a college level math course.
But the
well, there you go. Then just put them in a playlist then that are in order of difficulty. Yeah.
I have the
Michael, the Canadian atheist for 2, said, "Hi guys, hope all is well."
Hey Michael, it's been a while, buddy. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I have the math videos in a playlist, and like the highest one I did was actually God's Auditor told me it was really Calc 3. He's not wrong. Taylor series, which is a very special type of Maclaurin series, is probably Calc 3 level, but you first started getting familiarized with Calc 2, and I never took Calc 3, so but I learned about Taylor series. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we'll do something like that.
If you're gonna do it, is there really much of a point if you're only gonna do like one thing, or is it way more useful and way more helpful and way more interesting if you do like a mini series of like this is how to learn the algebra so you can do it yourself. Here's how to learn the physics. Intro? College intro?
College intro? Okay. Well, I mean, because I don't want to go back too far. I was thinking of like college algebra and pre-calc stuff, and then calc. I mean, I don't want to go back to like fundamental math.
Like long division?
Yeah, like like synthetic division. Have you ever done synthetic division? Oh my. Polynomial synthetic division makes no sense. You'll never do it in your life. Don't know why we ever had to learn it. In fact, it was kind of funny. I was talking to Dapper Dino the other day, and I had found a reactors manual from the DOE, the Department of Energy, and it was basically reactor principles, fundamentals of reactor kinematics, especially dealing with things like what's called beta bar, K effective, startup rate equations. And I asked Dapper, I was like, "Hey, look, is this exactly like what we studied in nuke school? Like, the questions come from this type of stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, there's no math in nuke school, was there?" And he's like, "Oh, no, not at all." Right, Dapper? Nuke school doesn't have any math. You don't have to learn any graphical calculus or anything like that. Or
it might be beneficial to start with conceptuals. Well, you start with a concept. What is algebra? What do you do with it? And how can you apply it? And then you start basics and then go more advanced. Find X. How do you balance an equation?
I mean, yeah, to a degree. I mean, I could probably do a fundamentals to algebra video. I mean, somebody's like Zeshi says comically, like start with 1 + 1, but he's not too far off. In fact, in number theory, that's what you would actually start off with. You would basically learning the number theory, you learn about natural numbers, real numbers, complex numbers. Then you start learning about what are called
So here's what you do.
groups and fields and rings and.
So here's what you do. You do essentially modules. So you do an algebra module, and you do like a quote what you would call level 1. And so where you just explain the concept of algebra, how algebra works, how you use it, and why you use it, and then go up to entry college level. Then you do algebra 2. And so you do it as modules, right? And each module can be like 1-2 videos, maybe they don't have to be like.
And then we get people in to do like the much harder stuff, right?
Yeah.
Then got people lined up to do
into like advanced
kind of stuff.
Yeah, you get pull in Landon, you pull in like Dr. Cruz.
I got Landon. I got Kirsten Banks coming
physics.
In.
Yeah, and you can do like things.
Silverman, what's her name is? I can't remember. You're the astrophysicist. Got her. She wants to do something.
Yeah, and then you can do one for physics. So essentially, you do the groundwork to do the module 1 for each area of science, and then you can do like a biology 1, and maybe Side would come in to do more advanced biology stuff like that, and then you can just have you yourself do the basic. Here's the base level of what you need. Now we can start talking about advanced things. Jackalope Herdmaster for 4 gave us coffee.
Cheers, Jackalope. Yeah, I had coffee earlier, and I'll explain why I'm actually so tired in a few here. But I have my monster that my roommate gave me. But we'll get into why I was up all night here soon.
And Reed for 2 said start with foil. LOL.
Foil. Oh, by the way, no, I'll be showing foil for my college algebra. I will be talking about foil actually because you have to factors and you have to learn how to multiply binomials. But I was thinking also.
You like a 5-minute intro.
Yeah, I was going to go like learning about exponents and maybe logarithms one of these days.
Another thing you might want to bring up is the fact that we kind of naturally use algebra without thinking about it, like when we use money, for example, or when we figure out how much gas is in the car and how far we can get on it. That's in your head algebra, basically.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely agree.
Solve for x. How far can you get on this tank of gas? X is the distance.
I like to do matrix too. That'd be kind of fun.
You do.
Well, let me ask the audience. Well, matrix is used for solving linear equations and using a matrix coefficient. You learn how to do what's called Cramer's rule and find the determinant. Then you use Cramer's rule to basically solve for 2 by 2. That part's actually not that hard. You could learn pretty easily. The hardest stuff is getting into what's called Gauss-Jordan's back substitution methods, and it's very. I can honestly say I really didn't understand why it worked. I just learned the process, the algorithm to make it work. That's all you have to do in math is you learn the algorithms. That's how you solve it. You don't unless you really want to learn the theory behind it, which I never did. I couldn't tell you how or why it works. Well, let me ask the audience. On a scale of like 1 to 5, like 5 being more advanced stuff that I'm capable of, which is not that advanced. My level's about Calc 2. I'm not good at calculus. Integrations, I'm really
What
horrible
do you mean?
at.
You have a PhD equivalent?
Yeah, according to some people, according to some people, nuke school is PhD level, which I've never said in my entire life. But hey, whatever. Facts don't matter when it comes to certain people. But it is definitely 200, 300 level college level. Courses. One of them, I think, was a 400 level, which was dealing with reactor control, I think it was. But most of them are about 200 to 300 level college courses. But let me ask the audience. So 5 was basically Calc 2. Like if you want to learn about Taylor series and infinite summations, put that as a 5. We'll put 1 as basic PEMDAS, right? You guys remember PEMDAS? You're Canadian, so you have probably what's called BEDMAS, BODMAS, or BIDMAS.
Oh, yeah.
So brackets, indices, rather than powers.
Yeah,
and
the order in which you do an equation.
Parentheses, exponents. Yeah. So the orders in which you do the operations, because that's really confusing to a lot of people.
That is like one of the only things that's one of the only things I actually ever got in my brain that stayed in my brain.
So let me know what you're more interested in, or where you think you would, not so much your levels at, but where you want to get refresher. So 1 would be starting with PEMDAS. 5 would be like I said, Taylor and Maclaurin series. Where would you want to kind of go with that? BODMAS,
I was
brackets, orders, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. Although division and multiplication are basically
Interchangeable.
Yeah, you just whatever you read right to left. Whatever comes first. Same with
Yeah.
addition and subtraction. Yeah,
You mean left to right?
left to right. Yeah. What did I say? Right to
I'm
left.
reading the
Yeah, I'm
equation
Hebrew.
backwards.
Yeah,
left to right.
no wonder you can't do integrations. You keep trying to do them backwards.
Right.
Steve's been reading too much manga.
I still remember the fundamental theorem of calculus. Yeah, but
I think it's a good idea to
equations.
start with Bedmas. I mean, with the amount of like wrong math that you see on Facebook, I think starting like at grade 10 would be a really good idea. But can we just like not bother with slopes and tangents and
No, that's
like
what
not
that's going to be
do
talking about. I'll
quadratic
be talking about
equations?
slopes. No, I'm going to be doing slopes in
No!
algebra. That's one of the things you can learn is the slope equation and the general solution for quadratic equations and the standard formula for quadratic equations. This is what
But
basically algebra deals with.
Chesh, y equals mx plus b. You have to have the plus b in there.
Yeah.
What was it? It's like, what is it?
That's your line equation.
X
Rise
to
over
the
run.
power of 2 minus x to the power, or yeah, minus x to the power of 1 all over y to the power of 2 minus y to the power of 1, or vice versa. If I'm remembering right, I don't know.
I use there's a graphing calculator called Desmos that I use, and it plots all that out for you. It's really nice. Now,
slopes are only important when there are curves in the right places.
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that for college algebra. Hopefully, I can remember it because it's been a long while. But
how do you measure the curve on your lady's thighs?
So let me ask you this. So I know we have so much to talk about tonight. We haven't barely touched the surface yet, but hey, it's been a while. So one of the first problems that I ever worked with on Facebook that got me into a lot of this stuff was this right here. That right there, and I typed it in the live chat. That caused so many problems years ago. A matter of fact, Cheshire met a friend of mine the other day, Amanda, and Amanda actually spent a lot of time on this very particular problem. And the reason why her and I met about 10 years ago and why we got along was because we both agreed on the solution to this problem.
It'd be so cool if Amanda could come on and actually go through the thing that she made for it.
Oh, I could ask her. She'd love to, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So here's the question for that particular problem. Using standard order operations.
0.99999 repeating?
No. Using standard operations, what is x? There's only one correct answer here when using standard operations. So what is it? You do it in your head?
Oh, the correct order of standard of operations. So yes. It would be do what's in the bracket, so you get 3,
okay.
And then you would do, that is supposed to be 6 divided by 2, right?
Yes.
So it would be 6 divided by, and then you would do 6 divided by 2, then you would multiply it by 3, and then that would equal x.
So right? 3 times 3 is 9.
I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, Dapper Diner got it right off the bat. So yeah,
I'm sorry,
there's one correct solution to that. It is actually 9. If you think it's 1 when using standard operations, I'm sorry, but you're wrong.
Listen, my IQ is only 62. I can't possibly know what 3 multiplied by 3 is.
You remember what bedmus was?
I do. That's because I do know what 3 multiplied by 3 was. I was just being a dick.
I don't think you do.
Oh, okay.
It's 2.99 repeating times 2.99 repeating.
Well,
I'll just do it on my hands. I got enough fingers for that.
Like, so. People are saying 1, and I do understand how they got to 1. I do.
Of course I do. But they're wrong.
But they didn't do it in the correct order, right?
If it was written a different way with the same numbers, it would be 1. If 6 was all over 2 times 1 plus 2 in parentheses, that would be 1. But that division is not all over. It's only the 6 and the 2 that it applies to. It's a binary operator.
That slash for division is called a solidus. What he's talking about is called a horizontal bar, or also known as a vinculum. A vinculum is a line. So 1 over a horizontal bar or vinculum, that means 1 over the rest of that quantity. So that's not how it's written. And so you have to follow standard order operations. Now, there's a thing in math which is weird. I don't know why we're getting into this right now, but there's something called implicit multiplication by juxtaposition, where multiplication by two numbers that are put next to each other have a higher binding than standard multiplication. However, that is a convention. It's not a mathematical fact, and there's a problem. There's problems when you do that. Now, if you go to college and they say, look, if you have implicit multiplication by juxtaposition having a higher precedence, and that's how they do it in their coursework, that's fine. Do it that way. It's just a convention. But understand that is a convention, but it's not the norm. It's if you're using standard operations, you don't have implicit multiplication by juxtaposition having a higher precedence, because basically multiplication is multiplication, whether it's implicit or explicit. So
Ilya Moon for 5 says, my favorites. Heart.
Moon. Thank you, darling.
Hi, Moon.
So
something that
what
I
do we
think
get for
that
numbers,
you're
by the
going to
way?
need to do, and I think this is absolutely necessary, is that if you're going to be doing this, you seriously need to have like a whiteboard essentially where you can write on and show it like above us over here. Over
Well,
there.
I have
So like
I have
in this
Libra
black
Math that I
space.
use. Yeah, well,
Whatever, as long as you can
Math?
show on the screen. Because what I did when you asked me about the equation is I actually explained step by step how to do the equation. So that was essentially the show the work. So you do this plus this, and then you would do this divided by this, then you would multiply it together. But if people can visualize you breaking the equation down, that will do you a lot.
Yeah, that's why I use Libra Math. All right, we'll just do one quick thing here and see if we both get it right. So this one right here, everybody gets wrong too. Again, I'll be talking about this for college algebra, but that's a very simple mathematical formula that a lot of people...
Are there supposed to be two negatives?
Oh, did I put two? No, it's only supposed to be one.
Yeah, it says...
Sorry.
Oh, okay. So it's x equals negative 2 to the power of 2.
Yeah.
So are we going to have to reteach people how to multiply like a negative times a negative equals a positive?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, what do you think the answer is?
So if a negative multiplied by a negative, I don't remember if I remember this properly, but if a negative multiplied by a negative equals a positive, then negative 2 multiplied by negative 2 would have to be positive 4.
But it's not. And the reason being is the answer is actually negative 4. Balloonator got right. The reason being is
it's negative.
Minus is a unitary operator. So when you have minus 2 raised to the second power,
that negative is actually separated from. Yeah,
correct. So it's 2 raised to the second power is 4, which is negative 4.
And then the negative is on its own.
So I think that's the kind of stuff that, if I get into starting to some of the basics, that's maybe what we're talking about, PEMDAS and things of that nature, where people make some very common mistakes that I've seen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a matter of people learn, because the thing is we didn't do, when I was in high school, we didn't do a whole lot of to the power of. We didn't do a whole lot of those. So if you're talking college level, then yeah, starting to do, because there's also things like 4 to the power of negative 2. Right? That was never.
That's just 1 over 4, though. That's just an inverse, right? I mean, it's a 1 over 4
we were never taught
right?
That.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you can say right, but we were never taught like negative exponents in high school.
I think you're right. I didn't really remember that in high school. I mean, Dapper can back me up on this. When you go to A school and you go to nuke school, you do a lot of maths, and you have to learn algebra really pretty well. Even though I forgot a lot about it, but that's how you actually do it. You do work with negative exponents a lot. So x to the -1, you just in your mind you just know it's 1 over x, right? So x to the -2 is 1 over x squared. You learn how to manipulate the negatives and the positives. And there's always the biggest problem I ever had in nuke school math was my minus signs. And so when you forget a minus sign and you still get the answer right, but your parity is off, or your signage is off, you still get partial credits. It's called ECF, error carried forward. But that was one of the biggest points I had knocked off, is because of my mistakes with negative signs. So, but yeah. You have to learn how to do exponents.
That would be to start off with explaining what does an exponent represent, and then what does it mean when it's a negative exponent, and then how do you approach the equation. If you start talking about how to,
that's actually
I think
good.
One of the things that what they never actually teach you very well is how to manipulate an equation, right? So if somebody throws an equation for gravity at me, I don't know how to take that equation and manipulate it into rearrange it and stuff. I have a little bit of a better understanding, but they don't actually teach you how to do that.
No, that's actually good. No,
and when you're solving, you always have to do the same thing to both sides. The same. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you do it to both sides of the equal sign.
But if you're going to teach people math, your best bet is to start off basically where high school left off, with a brief introduction of here's where we left off.
Yeah, I like that idea. I really do. By the way, oh, never mind. I thought there was a. I'm fine. I like that idea because, like in physics problems, what you have to do is you have to kind of look at what you have. You say, okay, these are the variables that I know. What variable am I looking for? Which formulas can I use to get me the variables that I don't know right off the bat that are not inclusive? Matter of fact, again, I keep bringing up Dapper because he's in the audience. Hey, Dapper, how many hundreds of formulas did we have to learn in nuke school? I mean, I'm not even being pedantic here. There was probably about 100 that we had to have memorized, and for that very reason, because you have to figure out what you want and what formula will get you there.
Yeah, and then you can start learning, once you've learned the basics, you start adding to those formulas and making those formulas more complicated, but then also learning how to take complicated formulas and simplifying them. So you end up with a situation where people will have a lot easier time dealing with, like Dapper just brought up, flat earthers. Flat earthers don't understand what an exponent is. They don't tend to understand how the actual math works. And a lot of the time you'll get the debunkers throwing the equations at them, but they legitimately don't understand what they're looking at. So if we have a place where maybe this math is straightforward and simple and explainable enough that a flat earther could understand it, and then you could do the same thing with biology, and you can do the same thing with physics, and you can do the same, and you can just work through the different areas of mathematics or different areas of science. So if you wanted to do biology, you would do intro. Here's where biology was left off in about high school level. Here's a brief, like, 10-minute video of, like, you learned about nucleus, you learned about cells, you learned about cell splitting, you learned about this is like what a reptile is, this is what blah, 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 and just do a quick bang, 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 bang. There's your 10-minute video of getting everybody, this is where we're starting from. And then you start going to more advanced things.
No, I think it's a good idea.
Reproduction, and then you can just pick, like, well, here's flowers, here's this kind of plant, here's that kind of plant, here's the blah, 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 blah. Godless Comer for 5 says, isn't a negative exponent something that fools jam truth?
Yeah, well, that's
yes.
What doesn't fool jam truth.
Okay, so I don't know if you know this. Negative exponents is the guy who trolled the hell out of JM Truth by saying that there was 20 seconds missing or something. That was the guy's tag. It was negative exponents.
Well, that was the from the rocket launch, right?
Yeah.
That
was brilliant.
He trolled him by giving him a different video. He literally gave him a different video from Astronomy Live's channel.
I think a lot of people have a problem with exponents because what happens is people we have what's called a holiest hermeneutic approach to things. And
nobody teaches it to them.
These types of approaches are just for kind of understanding, but they don't really kind of explain things pretty well when you're doing these kind of approaches. So when people learn about exponents, they think, well, an exponent is just basically repeated multiplication, and it's not really quite the case, I think.
Psychology would also be really interesting. Yeah, psychology is a little bit more difficult to do because it's not mathematics.
I know nothing about this. I would be the wrong person to do anything like that.
It's a different kind of science. It's more of like, I don't really like the terminology, but there's like hard science and soft science. So parts of like history are soft science and hard science. Geology is a pretty hard science. But you got algebra is these are numbers. These are what the numbers are. But in psychology,
I can explain
psychology, there isn't necessarily like, oh, if this person is behaving this way, it's always this answer. Like, it doesn't really work that way.
And if someone says they feel a certain way, you kind of have to take their word for it.
It's subjective.
Right. So I think psychology would be interesting, but I think it would just need to be approached from a very different angle than what we're talking about, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just think you would need to adapt for softer science.
So a lot of people when I asked them what level they wanted the higher level stuff. So, but
yeah, but that was Manya, who's already an engineer. That doesn't count.
She doesn't count. Yeah, we don't care about Manya's opinion. Why bother vote for anything, Manya? I will tell you this.
Listen, we love Manya, but you can't be like, yo, listen, talk.
She will. I don't know why she doesn't do some of these math type stuff as well. She can join me on any of them.
She's
in fact,
busy?
when I do the one on algebra, she's not busy. Never too busy for math.
it might have something to do with the fact she's actually an engineer and she does have a real job. She has to do.
And or maybe she's also in a completely other time zone, which makes it difficult.
Yeah, New Zealand's like on the other side of the world from us, basically.
Yeah, we would never want to do a do-it-yourself psychology. We would want to.
Yeah,
We
I
would
don't.
need
I
to get
wouldn't be
in
able
touch with.
to.
I do know a couple of people who would be really good for that. But again, it would be a matter of them finding time because one of them is a full-time worker, but also looking at doing their masters. So I don't know if she started her masters yet or not, but she's a very very busy person. So
I wouldn't
if
mind
she's
one doing a
available, I'd
philosophy of
love
the
to get her.
mind. I would
Oh, that'd
love
be
philosophy of the
interesting.
mind kind of stuff, which is kind of related to psychology in some ways.
Yeah, Manya doesn't count because she's a woman.
The verdict is still out on that, from what we understand.
Um,
She doesn't
I did.
self-identify.
I did see somebody call her Mania. So like they
Man,
capitalized
yeah.
the MAN. It's like
So,
that's a
so
highbrow.
I'll figure out some of those math type stuff, and like I said, I really want to get back into those types of things. But I think you're right. We'll do some biology, we'll do some physics, and get kind of like primers out there and kind of that kind of stuff. And because I think a lot of people
Yeah,
have an
because
interest
then
in
you
that, and
can.
then kind of increase it.
Then what you can do is you could actually bring once as you make the levels more difficult, you could actually bring a handful of equations over to the great debate community, bring people in who have been learning, and see how they do discussing the equations.
Yeah, like hey, Dapper, you want to be able to try to explain how to derive the startup rate equation? That took the full blackboard.
You're basically going to
But
teach everybody how to do nuke math
if
from
I
starting
remember
from high school
correctly, and
level.
I don't remember if this is classified or not, so I don't remember. But I remember the beta bar for uranium 235, I think it was 0.0067. Was that right, Dapper? And I remember the thickness of the niobium coating around the Zircon oxide fuel pellets was 8 microns, but I don't remember if that's classified or not. that tells you
I
that tells you the detail we had to freaking learn. You know.
I absolutely love that somebody just said man yeah.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, I'm
yeah
not
from
kidding.
cats.
These equations, you start off on the blackboard, and you start off with like a specific type of equation using K effective and beta bar, and these what's called the average logarithmic energy decrement per collision coefficient, or lethargy, and then you get into your K effective, then you get into your thermal utilization factor, your fast fission factor, and all these things you just I'm telling you, man, by the time you get done an hour later, you're like, here's the answer. And they're like, you missed a sign.
Dapper says he doesn't remember how much of that is classified, but he feels like most of it is.
Yeah, no, well,
Can
it
you
wasn't for my.
classify an? I didn't know you could classify an
No, because these
equation.
numbers are actually published in college books. You can actually find them. They're all out there.
So you would
So,
just use the general
yeah.
numbers. You wouldn't need to use like actual measurements or
The,
recent
what you're actually
measurements.
classified is like, for example, like the D2G reactors that we worked with. The pressure settings would be classified, but since it's a defunct system, right, that
Right.
nobody uses anymore, who cares, right? If I even told you what the pressure temperature settings is for a D2G reactor core, would you care? Would anybody? Would that? No, I mean it's just irrelevant, right? So, and I don't
Yeah.
remember. I remember vaguely the numbers, but I remember T hot. Well, T average was 480 degrees, and then you have T hot, T cold, which is your
And
thermal
then
loops.
Steve got swatted by the government.
They're listening.
I'm legitimately surprised Steve hasn't been swatted yet. Shh.
There you go. You see what I got to do with? Just give people ideas.
I'm
Thanks.
sorry, I'm the inventor of swatting. Okay.
Hey, if it ever does happen, man, it just proves my point that I deal with nutters, man. I have legit the most toxic fandom of YouTube that all they do
my
is
favorite.
by me, so I don't put anything past
My
them.
my favorite is the amount of fan fiction that they write. It's amazing. Some of my
It's great.
favorites.
I mean, I've only seen some of it, but I'm sure there's a hell of a lot more out there. As long as it's
Didn't you
entertaining
hear?
people,
Did
I'm
you hear
okay.
the most recent story? Apparently, there's a spy.
For the super secret meetings that
Oh
we don't have,
yeah,
interesting.
that's the
Because
fiction.
I
That's
didn't
the
know about them,
fanfic.
so I wasn't invited, which really upsets me. I mean, I feel like I'm
Well,
slighted
we
here.
all recently. It was recently revealed who the spy was. It's Red's Rhetoric. He posted the audio. He didn't
I
even know he was
yeah.
recording.
I know, and you know what? I was really taken aback by that. You think you know somebody, and it just throws you under the bus
Right?
like that.
And I'm really upset
Traitor.
because it
That's
was
okay. I have his
it was
nude.
my
They never
decorating
released.
ideas that were the problem. Like I wanted to paint the
You have
ceiling with
one.
my
I
own
Yeah.
wanted to see it.
blood. Yeah, I wanted to put blood
I
on
don't
the
judge.
ceiling.
Your rituals, man.
Oh,
But
Manya
let's
says she's
kind
going
of
for
let's kind
another
of
diploma. Nice. Congrats.
let's kind of change tracks real quick because I wanted to tell people I was up all night. Um,
Yeah, go for
so
it.
I I wanted to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to go visit a comet that was visible now. So the
Mm.
comet is C 2020 F3 Neowise, and I'm going to have a hangout later on tonight, maybe about 5 o'clock my time or early tomorrow, and I'm explaining to people how to put the comet into stellarium so they can actually see it from the location. But it is visible. It is about a magnitude 2, give or take. It's not visible with the naked eye for me here, only because I have light pollution, and it's so low on the horizon that it's very difficult to see with the naked eye. But with binoculars, I had a 5 times 20 binoculars with a 4.2 degree wide view. You can see it spectacularly. It's about that big. It's a rustic orange type color, definitely visible. So I'm going to be showing people how to see that if they're interested in it. It should be good for about 4 more weeks of visibility. But if you want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning to see it, then you can also see it at night too. Coming up in I think early August, or yeah, I think early August. But right now you can't because what happens is as the comet goes over to the west side, it actually goes over below the horizon before the sun does. Right. Obviously, you're not going to see
What
it when it's
horizon?
close to
What
the
do you mean?
sun. Yeah, well,
Golden Unicorn for
assuming the
two
Earth's not
said
flat.
finished my master's in 2014, going for a diploma in August.
Nice.
Nice. What are
Well,
you
her
going
and
for
I
a
need to get
diploma in?
together, and we need to talk about crystal radios. We're going to plan to talk about radio theory and how crystal radio works. I
Oh,
would
that's
love to
cool.
do that. Yeah.
Hell yeah. So we
It's just
got like a ton
a
of
crystal
math
and a
stuff coming
diode,
in.
basically. A crystal and a diode's all you need.
Well, the
So
crystal is
there's
the diode.
just
You have
so
a
far
germanium
we've talked
diode, which
about
is the crystal.
Well, yeah.
a series essentially explaining mathematics and then branching off into other fields of science, starting from a high school level, going upwards. Then talking about potentially softer sciences like philosophy and psychology, maybe. Then you're also going to do one talking about radio science, crystal radio science with Manu.
Yeah.
We're
Just
basically going to work put
just
together something that allows the internet to catch up in all the way to like college, like what college four or like advanced calculus.
I would
Probably.
I
I
would
mean, like
love
when
to
I compare.
be I would love to be included on that radio stuff because obviously having worked with
Oh
semiconductors
yeah,
in the
no,
past
I would love
and
that, man.
having worked with obviously one of the first things we had to do when I was in college was actually build a AM radio out of
I built my
basically
first one when I was like
spare
13.
parts. Yeah,
I had a radio station called KFI, which was a lot of power output. So I could actually use a germanium diode at a little LC circuit for tuning, and then a ground wire, and then an earpiece. That's all it really took. All you really need is an inductor, capacitor, germanium diode, grounding wire, antenna, an earpiece, and then
right.
you have a simple AM radio because what it does is it acts as what's called a rectifier. So you have the fundamental frequency comes in, and what it does is basically just strips the audio from that. Which
Right.
Manu and I will explain. But I had my radio license when I was 13. My ham radio license is KB6 HSZ. It's no longer active, but I got it when I was 13. Had to go to Orange Coast Community College.
I had
They
to go
issued
to code school.
yeah, code. I had to do. It was I think at the time 5 words a minute, Morse code, which I don't longer think you have to do because you have the no
No.
code tech license. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
but
it's all code is like code. If you learn code today, you're just showing off because data is such a huge thing nowadays.
d da da d d d d d da da da.
Manya
dee, dee, dee.
also, or Unicorn for two said occupational health and safety for their diploma.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, you guys didn't even thank me and congratulate me on my engagement. I'm getting married. I got married. I'm not sure
Condolences.
one or the other. Yeah. Well, me and Converse contender, happy couple.
Aww.
What? I looked really beautiful in a wedding outfit, so I figures a
Very
match made in
nice.
heaven. Yeah, he just loves me for who I am.
Oh, and we're also working on getting some D&D stuff put together, so there'll be some fun D&D bullshittery happening.
Yeah, we've been trying to say that for years.
Yeah, but I've actually been working on it.
So I'm just curious, how many people want to watch that Solarium thing? Did any of you guys like use Solarium? If not, you guys should. It's one of the best programs out there. But I'm
Not
trying to.
me.
I'm gonna try to tomorrow
Been
morning take
busy.
some pictures of it. I have this tablet thingy here that I'm going to try to use to. It wasn't charged this morning, so I couldn't use it. But I'm going to try to tomorrow morning. Actually, put the camera up to the binoculars and actually show that I actually can see it from my location. Manya congratulated me. Thank you. Are you going to come dance at my wedding, Manya?
I mean,
No?
probably. Um,
You stopped
we,
like you're waiting for the whole show's waiting on you, Manya.
I realize that this is
Right.
later, right?
Are we,
Who wants to not hang out?
and then what, we've got also, what are we doing? Twitter. Some things went on Twitter.
Yeah. So I was gonna show a math thing, the question, like a sample, but you know what? Don't worry about that. We already kind of went over that a little bit. So, anyways,
We did that.
I had a tweet hit 10,000 likes. I think that's the first one I've had that's 10,000. I've had close, but it's the first time I actually broke 10,000. And what it was, this is the core of our show tonight. About 50 minutes in. What it was in regard to a Twitter engineer post. It was, by the way, I didn't know it was a real thing. I didn't know this was a real account. I really didn't know this was a real account. But there is something called Twitter engineering, and they decided to put out a tweet about more inclusive statements and words to be used in coding. This has been tried before. It has never been really successful. But I thought I was like, is this serious? Because and when I posted this, a part of me actually was hoping that was actually a joke, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
Wasn't.
some of it's a little bit silly. Some of it I could probably get behind. Like the grandfathered one I could get behind.
See, that's what
Like,
I
could
can't
get behind. Really, like legacy to
I think
grandfathered. I think that's a fine.
Well, we'll go through them a little bit, and I'll explain why.
Okay, yeah. Let's one at a time.
All right. So anyways, like I said, so this actually my post got more likes than the Twitter like. But let's go through these. We're talking about the non-inclusive
Probably because
language.
people didn't like it.
Well, yeah, because it's a bad idea. What it is trying to socially engineer word usages. And these things have been around for a very long time. Matter of fact, in the military, especially, you have things called like master slave, right? Has nothing to do with race whatsoever. It doesn't make anybody racist by using master slave. I'm Jewish. I know about, look, my people were enslaved longer than anybody, okay? I don't get offended if somebody uses master slave, because that's the vernacular when you're using things like relays, or when you're using circuit breakers, right? Something that is controlled by something else, that's what it's termed as.
You're running into a problem where you're trying to take social terminology and import it or export it into places that aren't social.
Correct.
So you're applying a social meaning to the term master slave in a technical vernacular.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense. Now, look, if you're in a group, right? If Chester and I were in some group, and we say, look, we have this little club. Let's say we do a model planes. And in that model planes, we want to use certain terminology. You're more than welcome to. Let's say we have a social justice club. Hey, Cheshire and I, we're becoming full social justice warriors, which, by the way, some people think I am, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. I am like the antithesis of an SJW, but if you want to call me an SJW, be my guest. I just think it's weird, but I'm not. But let's say that we were, and we want to use these types of, it's very bizarre. But if we wanted to use these words that way, knock yourself out. Nobody says there's anything wrong with that. But
well, as soon as you look at whitelist and blacklist and you assume that, I would almost flip this. If you have whitelist and blacklist and you think that those are terms based on racial stereotypes and racial issues, I almost think you're racist.
Yeah, I thought the same thing too.
Why is everything that you're not that you're racist in the sense of you hate people, but as in like your mindset is so wrapped around racial stereotypes and slurs that you're looking for it everywhere.
Because
like why would you like just the assumption that they might be construed that way is like racist in and of itself. It's like a racist
that
assumption
like,
to say, if I say blacklist, well, it's a list of stuff. Well, it's not. No, it's
well,
it
has to do with like it has to do with light and dark, white and black. It has nothing to do with skin tone.
Oh yeah, it has
These
to
are
do with, like,
concepts
literally that.
that exist. This is like really bad tropey fantasy writing. Well, the light
Did you guys
side
watch
is
the
the
video by
good
Tracy
guys, and the
Ullman?
black side of the bad side. Like it's
Jess,
not.
did you watch Tracy Ullman's video that she made? It was brilliant. I mean, she's like
No, I don't
when
think
woke
so.
it's about wokeism gone too far, and she has a support group for woke people, and she brilliantly points out
Oh, that's
how it can
interesting.
go too far. Yeah, so Unicook, it's White Knight
We
SJW.
should
Now, you
maybe.
can't call it White Knight.
Yeah.
You can't play chess
All
anymore.
right.
In chess
Can't be a white knight.
by the way, in chess, somebody's gonna make a sexual comment about that. In chess, you have black and white pieces, right? But okay, so let's go through these real quick. So
If you think
again,
that's
this is more for
racial,
the.
I think you have a problem with like where is your brain at? Like if you're
Oh, I
making
completely
that
agree.
assumption.
I completely agree. If you're
Anyway,
getting around dealing with race, there's a problem because these
I
things are
saw a
not
really
racial
funny meme
overtones.
that goes along with this. I'll see if I can find it and send it to Pool.
All right, so let's look at these inclusively. And by the way, they're talking about their coders more than anything else, right? They're talking about Twitter coding. This is so we have Bullinator here. He's a coder. I used to code a little bit. All right, so whitelist, allow list. Now, there's a problem I have. I'm going to give you my problem with some of these, and then you could tell me if you find issues with them. Okay.
It's segregation because you're being discriminatory about who you're allowing into your place. It's exclusionary. That's the word.
Well, no, there's something called. There actually is an allow list, right? I mean, Bullinator can tell you an allow and deny list do exist in coding. But I don't think they're exactly the same thing as what I construed as be a whitelist or blacklist. When I say blacklist, like for example, Chester, you've been blacklisted from the entertainment community. You're not on deny list.
Right.
Deny list has to do with more communications between computer systems. Like for example, Bullinator, maybe you can talk about firewalls, you can talk about IP protocols. Those would be more considered to be the allow list and deny list. Maybe
right. Like if I was gonna have but I still could call them whitelist and blacklist. I'm blacklisting your IP. I put it on the deny list for my firewall. It's kind of the same concept. They're related. Some cases can be interchangeable, but oftentimes it doesn't make sense.
Well,
because
again, you're talking about the difference between
whitelists tend to be actual people, like accounts, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas
if you say, "Look, I whitelisted like in YouTube." There really used to be going around that certain YouTube channels were like whitelisted and blacklisted because of how many words they use in the metadata that caused them to be, denied monetization. That doesn't make sense to me to call that allow or deny list. Those were blacklisted channels for what they have said in the metadata.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
but there's also a difference between when you're talking about, again, we're talking about difference in the situation. You're in a different, you have a different expectation for whether you're talking socially and what kind of social thing you're talking about. So you could be blacklisted from a club, which means you are denied from that club. You could also be blacklisted on, let's say you live in a town and there's like 6 or 7 bars that are all nearby. You could get blacklisted from one bar and be denied from that one bar, and all the bars talk to each other. So you're blacklisted, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get denied at every single bar. So you could be blacklisted and denied in one place, but this is an individual in a social situation versus if you're talking about IP addresses and allowing different people to access different sites or utilize your platform. Like an IP ban could be considered, like off Twitter could be considered not only have you been blacklisted, but also you're being denied access to Twitter via your IP.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there's not interchangeability. Matter of fact, an IP ban would be a deny list.
Well, that's what they're doing. They're taking away that interchangeability in this case.
Yeah, and they're forcing it upon people too.
Aspect.
This is the social engineering aspect of it. Exactly. The social engineering aspect is saying, look, we're telling you that this is how we want you to do it, and not a matter of just people by choice. If people by choice say, look, we don't want to use these terms, we don't want to use whitelist or blacklist, I totally get it, right? Fine, not a problem. But when you try to mandate it to a group of people, that is effectively what I would consider to be social engineering, right? All right, so look at the next one. So master slave. again, when you're people that have been in the army, when you try to jump a tank, you actually have a special kind of cable, which is a master slave cable. And then also when you're doing anything dealing with relays, you have a master slave solenoids and circuit breakers. So I don't understand how that would be the same as trying to say leader follower, primary replica, primary standby. By the way, it's not necessarily a standby. You can have a primary system where the secondary system isn't in standby. It's not really, I don't know. I don't like the word standby. It's not really standing by. It's just basically the secondary or the slave is contingent upon the primary. It's a response to the primary.
Well,
so if the primary solenoid operates, then you have the secondary that.
But in like if you look at like database systems though, like if you've got a database, it's the primary database, and everybody does perform writes and reads from that database, and the other one's just there to read from if the primary goes down. You can't. Mm-hmm. It's a backup. It's pretty much standing by for communications. The only thing it's doing is pulling updates from the primary so that it's up to date if the primary should crash. But you can't write to it, because if you write to it, the primary won't get those writes.
But yeah. But as you pointed out, to me, that's more of a backup than standby. But I make a good point. If your primary is going to be your read or write operations, if those are the rights given to the privileges to the user, and your standby just has read, because you like you said, if you write to the what would happen if you wrote to the standby but not to the primary?
It would be out of sync. It would you would have data. Yeah, if you tried to read that from the wrong source, it wouldn't be up to date, and it wouldn't be atomic.
Synchronization issues.
Yeah.
Because when I did database programming a long time ago, but we did what's called sequential reads. Sequential reads are basically, as you would know, but you basically are reading them in a sequence, right? Rather than random type. And
Savanil in the chat makes a good point too. That like server and client is what most people hear when you think internet, but server and client is not even. When you think client and server, like your Discord client, it talks to the Discord server, but client and server when it comes to just general internet protocol stuff, the client is the one who initiates the connection. The server is the one who answers. Yeah, that's literally the only difference.
Exactly. When I was
you also run into a problem. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say real quick. I did Novell networking a long time ago, and Lantastic, way back when, right? And that was exactly it. The client was the one that actually would instigate the communications to the server, and then the server would give them the requested data. That's what a server client system would be.
Yep, that's it. Well, and
have you noticed?
It's so muted in it's so up. There's a big gray area when it comes to IP stuff, because like you can run a piece of server software on any machine, even your home computer. You know, you can sit there and put one on your PC, sit in your house, and run an FTP server. And then FTP in and of itself is kind of weird too, because you have the control system, which is the server answers the client, but then when it comes time to send the data, the server opens a connection back to the client to transmit the data
through the FTP port, whatever.
Through the alternate. No, it's the other port. The FTP port is only control.
Oh, really?
Have you noticed?
So the
FTP, unless it's in passive mode and it's all on the control channel, it actually uses it.
I don't remember what port it is for FTP, but I remember a specific port for FTP and HTTP specific port.
Right, but the actual data, if you do a get from FTP, unless you go into passive mode, it actually kind of picks a port at random on the client side.
Wow.
And listens for a connection from the server.
You guys remember Telnet?
Yeah, it's a lot like Telnet.
Telnet. Yeah, I remember Telnet. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jess. We're having a moment of like computer stuff.
I know. Have you noticed that there's also a problem with the majority of these revised version? So leader/follower and primary/replica/primary/standby. What happens if we start replicating people? Like replicating individuals.
Does
that mean?
Then we need Blade Runners and the whole thing goes to hell. Yeah.
Right. Well, now it's racist. Yeah, but
A lot of them throw
if
that
you're
term out
talking
there,
about,
racist, but they don't. A lot of times, it's not even dealing with a race. And
well,
what's
that's the
funny
thing.
is
Master
the people
slave.
that use these
Master
terms.
slave isn't
Let's say what?
good.
I was gonna say
Yeah, but like,
the
if
people
you're
that they're
just
trying
saying
to get to use
master
these
slave,
terms.
oh, we're stuck with a
We got so much
lag.
lag. Oh my god, you guys let me know. We have so much lag right now. It's ridiculous. I mean, like bad.
It's you, Steve. It's all you.
All right, go ahead, Cheshire. Then I'll go because the lag right now is crazy.
To think that referring to master and slave is inherently a bad thing is kind of bizarre to me, because it's only a bad thing when you have physical people enslaved. But the program that you're talking about does not have a choice, will never have a choice, because it's not an AI. It doesn't have, it's not, or at least it's not an AI that's advanced enough to be cognizant. It's not conscious. So, like, if I, by that, my arm is a slave to my body, my mind is a slave to, like, but that's not inherently a bad thing. It just is what it is. It's a descriptor to describe a situation, and that is the situation. So to call it something else is kind of, it's like George Carlin goes on a whole rant about this. He's talking about, oh well, we're not gonna call people homeless anymore, we're gonna call them temporarily lacking housing. Right, like temporarily displaced
Temporarily
persons.
house
Well, they're
challenged.
homeless. Right, they're homeless, they need homes, because what you're doing in a social situation like that, to bring it back to actual social situations, is you're detracting from what the problem is, and that the problem is perfectly solvable if people stop being such greedy assholes. It's not hard to get people cheap housing, and housing for free in some cases. It's not impossible. It's just we're going to call them something else to detract from, because thinking about people being homeless is uncomfortable.
Well, that's what it is. That's exactly what I think of what's going on with Twitter. They're trying to not highlight the problem by merely changing certain words. I'm telling you right now, changing words is not going to solve anything. It doesn't alleviate racism. Racism exists, unfortunately. That's
Right.
because education is the problem. I am a firm believer racism isn't in something that is actually a learned behavior. We are not born racist in any way, shape, or form. That is a learned behavior by people watching other people be, basically, for lack of a better word, shitheads. So when you're trying to force people to use certain terms like this, it doesn't help anybody. And in fact, I think it exacerbates the problem, because now people are going to say, look,
Yeah, it makes it
I'm
worse.
not racist. And I still have to use these types of terminology because you're forcing me to. That, to me, seems to promote the stereotype of racism by saying, hey, look,
it builds resentment. It just builds resentment. Like,
yeah.
Why do I have to change everything I've been doing my entire
Right.
life just because you want to turn around and say suddenly
So,
that it's a racist thing
to
do?
To be
Exactly.
fair, not if there is actual racism going on, you should be expected to change your behavior. You should be expected to stop what you're doing. You
Absolutely.
should be expected.
Absolutely.
The problem is when you are looking for racism where it isn't. When you're looking for transphobia where it
Yes.
isn't. When you're because now you're detracting from actual why are we sitting here talking about this right now when there's way more like actual issues? Like, fucking, it would be probably useful to talk about what the hell is going on with J.K. Rowling recently. Part of that is the same sort of problem, where
I agree.
this is so mundane and a non-issue. This is just Twitter, like, virtue signaling to their SJW, to the SJW
thank you.
portion
That
of
was the
their
point of my
fucking
tweet.
base.
That's why I was like, this is serious. This is legit a huge virtue signal. By the way,
and racism is important.
The watchers. Uni.
Uni?
I don't know why I just call
Did you
uni.
just call people uni?
I'm looking at I'm looking at the live chat, and it's beauty cock.
Yeah, you're looking at beauty cock.
Yeah.
Don't do that ever again, Steve.
I see
ever
a symbol.
call me uni again,
because I'm sorry. Beauty cock's got to change that symbol, man. It's just
Steve is gonna get smoted. Steve's gonna get smoted.
Oh man.
Here, I got something. I got something
Thank
for
you.
you guys.
Thank you, Bull.
I got a show and tell for you.
You know what's funny is when the mind and the mind and the mouth disconnect.
Yes.
Stupid horror energy says she likes deny list. You are denied.
Everybody
denied.
Denied list. Yeah.
So my grandfather is actually a writer, a columnist for the most part, and he actually wrote a book. So this is the book.
Words
Um,
fail
and I, yeah, and I actually recommend it. I've been reading it. It's very good, and it has a very interesting take on language and being like, are you this? They're saying that this isn't very convincing. It's not supposed to be convincing. It's supposed to be persuasive. There's a difference between convincing somebody and persuading somebody, right? So the whole book is about like poor use of language.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, contrary to popular belief, I am a descriptivist. I'm not a prescriptivist. I think language is malleable. I think it's changed. I think as long as you get your point across, um, that's what matters, right? I mean, I'm not one of those grammar Nazi people.
This
It
book
drives me freaking
argues
nuts.
for both. This book actually argues for both. It's really interesting because he's essentially like, there's nothing wrong with using a word in a way that makes sense or a way that is a little bit different, but why are you using that word when there is already a word you could be
Yeah,
using?
yeah, that's my argument as well. Look, I'm not a prescriptivist, but there are certain terminologies. For example, like let's say somebody has this word and they say, "Look, I want to use this word stipulatively in some other way." I'm cool with that, as there's a reason for it. But if I ask them, "Well, why do you want to use that term stipulatively when we already have a word that works for that?" And then they can't give me a
Copyrighted in
reason for that.
1993.
But that's the problem I have when people use stipulated terms. I use stipulated terms all the time. Like, for example, I was talking to Fuzzrana the other day on Twitter, and I told him a term that I use is non transportable justification, and I told him it's stipulative. I made it up, but I gave him why I made it up and what it entailed, and he liked it. He's like, that actually makes sense. That's a justification for why I use that term, right? So there's nothing wrong with using stipulative terms, and as long as you could explain to people, I'm using it this way to explain a concept, like non-transportable justification. I try to relate it as a concept, and he got it merely by the use of the term that I had the neologism for. So there's nothing wrong with that. But as you said, if you have a word that already exists in the English lexicon that we already have an understanding of, why would you want to use something else that just causes confusion? That's what I don't understand.
I linked the book in the chat if you guys are
Like if
interested
I
in
say
reading it.
dogs are now cats, so a feline is now called a dog. Okay,
Yeah,
you
why
can
wouldn't you
do
just use
this,
the word feline though, right?
but why would you
Yeah.
misuse the word cat for feline?
So
That's the problem I have with people.
one of the examples he talks about is the word source. So he's like, it's really frustrating when the news says they have a source because it's too vague. He's like, okay, where is your source from? You don't have to tell me their name. You don't have to give me that much information. But sources say that President Trump has a really high calorie intake, and the numbers that we see from his doctor might not be what they say they are. Well, is this some who's your source? Because if the source is like some intern at the White House, well, what the hell do they know about the calorie intake
Right.
of the president? But if it's the hot dog guy that works out front of the White House that that the president stops at every day 6 or 7 times, then yeah, he's probably got a good idea about the president's calorie
Well,
intake.
I mean, you kind of have to assume that when somebody uses a source like that they mean an informed source, or there's an implied thing
Why
there of an
too
informed
thing
source.
you should there is, but we're talking about places like
At least in
it
journalism.
is, but is that actually the case? You would think, but you've got places like,
Well,
you know,
probably not.
certain YouTubers that will use the term source and they mean and they it's implied that it's a reliable source, but they're using kiwi farms. Or you've got
Yeah,
Fox News
yeah.
using
I've
the
seen all
term
that
source
context.
because
Fox. I was gonna say
because
Fox, CNN
right,
anymore, all of them anymore.
exactly. Right, and this is because regular mainstream media has gotten lazy by only using the term source, which is allowing other people to take advantage of it. So you get in a situation where if more credible places supposedly like actual news actually referenced where their source was from. So if they said a source within the White House, a source within this like within this context,
Yeah,
that little bit of extra
a
effort now
source
gives
from the
you a little bit
president's
more
cabinet.
confidence. Exactly. You don't have to say who it is. A source that works at a
Close to the
food
president. Yeah.
place that they that the president frequents.
Yeah, non-specific, but still narrows it down to show that that person who is a source is has
Why that
some
matters,
information
who
that
they are.
why they're a reliable source in that regard. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
All right, so let's move to the next one because this one you kind of agree with and I don't. Grandfathered legacy status. The reason I have a problem with this is one, I don't see any ageism involved in this whatsoever. But legacy status has a very
Oh well, yeah.
specific terminology in computers, right? I mean, you know computers, Bull knows
Okay.
computers. So a legacy, right? A legacy hardware means usually depreciated hardware that's no longer supported by drivers. If I had like a Winchester drive, that would be legacy, an
Okay.
MFM, RLL, those types of circuit boards. Those are all legacy type systems. RAID, I don't think even do they still use RAID? Cool. RAID systems?
They never. I don't think they're ever going to stop using some form of RAID. It has evolved.
Yeah,
Right,
okay. That's,
like
yeah.
nobody uses like you're an idiot if you
SCSI.
use RAID 1. That's dumb
RAID
because
1.
that's like waste of an entire hard drive just to back your shit up. You might as well just back it up.
Those are legacy type systems then, right? So
right, but
SCSI systems and all that. So that's what when I hear the word legacy, that's what I hear in my head. Grandfather doesn't.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. If legacy already has a term, yeah, now you're running into trouble where you're replacing a term and then kicking that term out. So now you don't have a term for this other thing. Because grandfathered is
Right.
something that's still used. That's the whole point of it being
Yeah.
grandfathered. It's
Grandfather
still
clause.
supported. It's still being, yeah. That it has
in
nothing
legal
to,
terms, we all know what a grandfather clause is, right? It's already something that's established. It has nothing to do with ageism. It has to do with longevity of the fact that you are
yeah.
allowed certain privileges that are going to be from that point, even though everybody else may not, right? So you're grandfathered in. You know, it doesn't apply
Yeah.
to you. That makes sense,
There
right?
were
We use
people
these terms
that
because they have context to them.
the schools in a district can redraw their district lines. That happens. A lot of time, if you've got a school that lasts more than, like, say you've got high school and it's grade 9, 10, 11, and 12, you've only got 4 years. And if you're in grade 11 and they redraw the district, they'll grandfather you into grade 12. How
I've
old are
actually
you
had
when
something
you're in high
similar.
school?
Yeah, when I was in elementary
It's
school,
nothing
they
to do with
redrew
your
the
age.
lines. From my elementary school, I actually had to like change over because I wasn't grandfathered in to be in the old school, and yeah,
Yeah, and
I was like
some will and
second or
some
third
won't,
grade.
depending, like, yeah, if you're only in grade 9 when they do that, they're not going to, they'll just make you change schools. So you still got 3 years. But if you're in grade 11, you've only got 1 year left. They're not going to make you change schools, or even if it happens while you're in grade 12. They're not going to
Yep,
halfway through the year switch all the kids around. Like, that makes no sense. But again, how old are you when you're in high school? It has nothing to do with how old you are
17.
at all.
I
So he's
graduated at
right,
17.
exactly. Well, 17,
Uh,
18 ish.
yeah, 17, 18.
Some people graduate when they're 19.
I skipped for I think first grade or kindergarten. I remember I skipped one grade, and I was accelerated. I was in what's called MGM and GATE. Did you guys have that in Canada? Gifted and talented education,
No.
and MGM was mentally gifted
Oh, well,
minors.
they have stuff like that, but that's not what it's called.
Hmm. All right, so moving on to the next one. So gendered pronouns, e.g., guys. Again, folks, people, you all. I mean, that to me is kind of bizarre. What does this have to do with coding? I don't know. But it's all.
Yeah, that's what I'm really confused about. They seem to have swapped from computer lingo, like, what not what's the word I'm looking for? Jargon. They've
Mhm.
swapped from technical jargon into gendered pronouns that have
Yeah, what does this
nothing
have to
to
do with
do
coding?
with coding
Absolutely
and
nothing.
yeah, so I don't, I'm down. I don't really have a problem necessarily with, for the most part, removing gendered pronouns from vernacular. Not because I
In a
think
group, if you
it's
want to, sure.
necessarily a, well, and not because I don't think it's necessarily a problem to use them or that you shouldn't use them, but because I don't find them useful anymore. They don't they don't have the connotation. They're not helpful. If I say, "Hey, she's a really good mechanic," what does she have to do with anything? The she is just a detraction from what I'm
No,
saying.
it's just an
It doesn't tell
identifier.
you anything about them as a mechanic.
No, but it just narrows it down.
Right.
It's because you're not using their specific name, right?
Right, but if I
The
use they, it doesn't
third
really
person.
narrow it down. It only narrows it if narrowing it down isn't part of what I'm trying to say. Right? So if I'm trying to say, like, if I'm trying to describe somebody specifically to you, so like I'm trying to direct you to when you get to this mechanic shop, she's the only mechanic there. She's the only she that works there. Then that information is useful. But if
Narrowed
I'm
it
just
down.
generally saying that yeah, exactly. But I'm specifically trying to narrow it down. But if I say she's a great mechanic versus they are a great mechanic, it's not useful. If I say Melissa is a really great person. They are a very good mechanic. Is the exact same as Melissa is a really great person. She is a really great mechanic. She and they is interchangeable. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, usually you would use usually you would use the pronoun after you've actually established to whom you're talking about, right? The name. And I
Yeah,
can't remember.
exactly.
There's a linguistic name for that. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Oh.
If you guys are in linguistics, you
There's
know
a technical
what it is.
term.
But there's a technical term to referring to the using the pronoun back to a reference in the same sentence. It's a technical
I can see that
linguistic
being
term, and I
really
don't remember, but
problematic in I can see that being really problematic in writing. Like if you're writing a story, no longer being able to use it, and you're describing multiple people having a conversation in this situation. So you're say they every single time or them every single time, and you've limited to you're no longer using she or he. But I would say that that shouldn't apply in the case of writing for fiction, even nonfiction, because you've already established the gender of that character. Hell, you could even use it to establish that this is the way this character views themselves. However, this like if you have a trans character in your book and viewing how they if you're writing from their thought process versus how everybody else is referring to them. So people might be referring to that character as a male, but in their internal monologue they refer to themselves as a she. That could be a really interesting writing device. So if you're like you're not allowed to use gender pronouns anymore, you've eliminated that entire chance at actually exploring a trans character in a novel.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And by the way, the word I'm thinking of is antecedent. I don't know
Oh,
why I couldn't
nice.
think of it. Yeah, when a pronoun refers back to the subject, you're referring back to the antecedent of the pronoun.
Right.
Yeah. Probably.
But I
It's
don't know
like,
what this has to do with
see how different
programming.
topics we cover here. What?
Right. I still don't know
No, I don't.
what
I don't know
guys
how that has to do with
are
programming
they
at
just
all.
gonna
Yeah.
take lo la lay out of are they gonna take lo and la out of French and Spanish and like
Yeah, it'd be really difficult for Spanish speakers, right? Because the feminine masculine thing in Spanish is like prevalent throughout the language, right? You know, O and
because it doesn't
A
refer
is
to
like
gender. It doesn't
because
refer to
yeah,
like
well,
biological gender.
no,
Well, yeah,
it doesn't.
because
They're a feminine.
all tables are female, whether they're in a man's room or not.
Mesa, yeah,
Right.
yeah, baño. Yeah, certain they don't actually refer to male and female genders from people. They actually just but the language considers to be
Right.
masculine or feminine. Yeah.
Yeah, but now we're
So,
talking about like the linguistics of like how a language is even built and how would you change that? Because the thing is, if you're talking about taking out grandfathered and master and slave, you're legitimately talking about changing and rerouting how the language and programming has developed, which is outside of whatever social norms are within English. English specifically. This is specifically English. Gendered
mhm.
pronouns like guy and girl aren't the same as gendered pronouns in French. You run into
Well, I
so
mean,
many
well, here,
problems.
so like here, like he, his, him, they, them, there. What happens if people don't want these third party? I mean, I don't want to be referred to as they, them, or their. I'm a he.
It does feel a little bit less personal sometimes.
Well,
You
the
know what I
And
mean?
then you got
we've talked about
languages with the opposite problem where they don't even have pronouns that have gender. Like there are
right.
none that have gender to begin with. So then what do you do in that case? Like okay, well they don't need to do anything specifically, but all this just throws them for a loop when they hear about it. They're like, "What the hell difference does it make, people?"
Yeah, it's just really confusing to me.
I
So
think
forget about
there's
the
a difference
pronouns.
between not assuming and There has to be a middle ground. Like you can't. It seems to me to be ridiculous to be. And again, besides the point and the actual issues, to be upset by something like master and slave, whitelist, blacklist, or guys and gals, not because you don't want to be misgendered. That's fair. That's totally fine. But if you're gonna get to the point where you're like, no, nobody can speak Spanish or French anymore
Right.
because the tables are gendered, you've jumped the shark now. Now you're not actually caring about.
Well, this jumps the shark
anymore.
for the same reason, because it's not just
exactly.
Obviously, it wouldn't work for Spanish, but it doesn't work for coding and computer systems either. This is a fail. I mean, absolute fail.
Yeah, Boy of Ink for 2 says in Lithuanian the word uncle has feminine gender.
There you go. Yeah.
See?
All right, so
in Spanish, dog is masculine.
Why would you cancel? Yeah, are you going to start taking out words like mom and dad? Should you? Does mom and dad represent a gender?
Yeah.
Or does mom and dad represent a role that somebody, a role that somebody plays in your life? Can a guy be a mom? Sure. Can what we describe as more motherly qualities come naturally to a male over some females? Sure. Why not?
I don't know. I think those words, like, again, words convey a context, right? So when we say a mom and dad, they do convey certain context. You could actually be, a male figure that has motherly instincts. That doesn't necessarily make you a mom.
Right.
But when we talk about mom,
depends on how we use the term.
Yeah, I think most of us have a concept of what we mean by that, right? It's not just motherly.
It could mean like a female figure of authority and or trust in your life. That doesn't have to be your biological mother.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, clearly, mother and fathers don't have to be biological. Clearly, and that's
right.
We all accept the fact that they're people that have adopted kids, or that people have a close familiarity where they consider themselves to be children or offspring, and the mother and father of people. I get that, and I totally agree with that.
People that I've called uncles aren't my uncles. Like they're not my biological uncle.
Yeah. But the next one, like the man hours, that one drives me nuts. Person hours, engineer hours. First of all, engineer hours. No, they're not always engineer hours. And person hours,
I'm sorry. In human.
Yes, man. I'm sorry, but we are mankind. Mankind does not mean men. Mankind means humans, men and women.
Yes.
Combined. That is the terminology. That's how we understand it. It's not. I really just get bothered by people trying to make that into some kind of like patriarchal
issue
thing. Yeah, it's not.
I am willing to grant that man hours most likely was called man hours, not actually based on ever calling it human hours, but mostly because the workforce was male dominated. Sure, they're not calling it. And that might be the case. I don't know. I don't know enough about the evolution of language to say that is definitely the case. But I'm willing to grant that. I'm willing to be like, okay, yeah, it was a patriarchal society, and this term came from that. However, man is short for human. So you could call it human and short form it to man, and it just means people. It already means people.
Human hours.
So
what's the short form of human hours? Man hours.
What if engineer hours? What if you're not an engineer?
Wait. Woman, right? Woman.
I'm not an engine. Woman. Yeah. This I don't think this is silly. TD Lane for 2 says linguistics is the natural foe of SJWs.
It is.
Yeah, well, that's
really
sanity check.
TD Lane's correct. And by the way, TD Lane, I got your message, but I got so wrapped up. But I appreciate your offer. I wasn't able to make it, but I didn't mean to blow you off. I really didn't. It's just I'm not going anywhere in anytime soon because of the pen. I don't want to say the word because I get demonetized. But
yeah, Boy of Ink says, what about work hours instead? And Icarus says, what about male/female cable plugs?
Well, here's the thing. This is Boy of Ink. This is why work hours doesn't work. Because man hours and work hours are not necessarily the same thing. Work hours are generally 1 hour. Straight up 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Man hours, how much hours you expect to get a job done, are based upon how many people are involved in the project.
Yeah, and it can be a total number. So man hours would refer
Right.
to if you have 3 people working for 1 hour each, that's 3 man hours.
3 man hours, right? Exactly. That's how it works. If anybody's ever in retail, when you plan something out, we say, okay, look, we've got this set to do. How many man hours do you need? That's highly contingent upon how many people you have working that project.
Titan
Anybody
says
heard of scheduling knows
menopause.
that.
Menopause is now personopause.
Okay, how about the next one? Sanity check. Quick check, confidence check, coherence check.
So here's the thing with sanity check. Every single thing that they gave it can later down the line be changed back to sanity check because those words are now the offensive ones.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Same with the next one.
Here's what I have a problem with Bull, and maybe we can impart your wisdom here. Let's say you have when you're doing a sanity check, and basically that's just saying, look, the computer has done some operation. We want to check the operation got a valid, true result. That's what a sanity check is. So they're trying to say now, though, we're going to call that a confidence check or coherence check. Well, confidence check is a little bit different, I think. And I don't know. I never heard of coherence check, so I don't know what the hell that is. And I don't know what a quick check. I've never heard that term either.
They're literally the reason why they're using coherence is they're legitimately trying to find a word that is equivalent to sanity.
Well,
so saying that something is incoherent.
But sanity check has an actual term in computer
terminology. A sanity check.
I agree, but I'm
a
saying
sanity
that
check.
Social thing going into it, right? This is that they're imposing that social.
Right. Well, they're looking at sanity as a bad, opposite of sanity would be insanity, and that QED insane, which we don't like to call people insane. So it always goes back to this could offend somebody. That's what I see this comes from. But in computers, a sanity check is different than like an error checking. Like an error checking is something that you do on every piece of data.
Yeah, checksum.
And it is like a checksum or a cyclic redundancy check or something like that.
CRC, yeah.
But
I remember all that stuff.
That word redundant, that could offend somebody.
Right, it could because
a cyclic redundancy check.
Right. So but the thing about a sanity check is like, okay, it doesn't make sense for this number to be less than it was than when we started. That's a quick sanity check. So greater than or less than or equal, a branch of equal, a branch of less than, a branch of greater than. That's easy to do. That stuff happens in a clock tick. So
you can't use the term less than equal.
Yes, I can if it's actually less than equal.
Nothing's allowed to be less than equal.
You're dehumanizing the variable.
I'm dehumanizing the absolute value. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But I think you're right on that. I mean, like to me, confidence levels deals with your error margins, right? I mean, that has nothing to do with the sanity check. It has nothing to do with, like you said, when you're dealing with things dealing with cyclic redundancy checks, or you're dealing with the checksums. These are our error correction systems, right? But the sanity check is like, look, if you're doing an addition operand, and especially if you're using assembly language, and you jump on like zero, what is it, J and
the sanity check is if the carry flag is set, point blank. If the carry flag is set, if the carry flag is set, you overflowed and your value is meaningless.
But that's the problem, right? I mean, if you're having an operand where you expect to have a positive something and you have a negative and your carrier set, your carryover flag is set, there's a problem there. That would fail the sanity check. Now, it's been a long time since I did assembly, but I remember, JNC and JZ, and I remember you have like. How many different flags do you have on an 8088 processor? You have the non-zero, like jump if what is the parity?
You have zero.
Parity?
You have
zero carryover.
You have zero equal.
We're going back. This is legacy stuff.
Here. You have the you have
8086.
You have the carry flag. You always have the carry flag because you need it for subtraction. You need to be able to borrow from it for subtraction too. That's how subtraction works, by the way. You have to set the carry flag if you're planning on doing subtraction, and you have to unset it if you're planning on doing addition. It's your sanity check to see if it worked.
Don't you load the accumulator, you put it on the stack.
Well, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. That's the point.
Sorry, Chesh, we're nerding out here. This is like going back a lot of years.
So, well, yeah, that's fine. So, let me maybe say this differently. if somebody's tweeting about something and what they're saying is like bizarre or makes no sense to me, and I go, maybe this person needs a sanity check, it's implying whatever they're saying is insane or like they're not mentally sound.
Right. The
Right? So
insanity
that
applies to the concept, not them necessarily.
I can imply it either way
It
I
could be
want.
both.
I'll
Yeah, it could be
straight up
both.
imply
Yeah,
that,
either
like,
one.
I'm for the example, I'm totally fine to say I am actually questioning this person's mental state. But here's the thing: they're
Hmm.
implying that asking that question or having
Is
that
bad.
pause to question somebody's sanity is a negative thing. How is somebody supposed to get help or be recognized that they need help if you can't be like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying, and I think you might actually have a mental problem.
Well,
Like, I think
moreover,
you
if you
should
think
go and
sanity check is
actually
something that's
get yourself
triggering,
checked.
you need some help. I'm sorry, but if you think sanity check is triggering, there might be some underlying sanity issues there. But
Well, yeah, exactly. If somebody says they think that what you're saying is
it's
incoherent, or they
unhealthy.
think what you're saying, because that's the immediate go to if you say it's a coherence check. Well, I'm going to check the
Mhm.
coherence. Well, now I'm implying that you're incoherent as a person. Well, no, I'm not. Right? So, like, it doesn't matter if you switch, because they're trying to find a simile, right? But they're trying to find a simile to put a band-aid on a social problem within programming. It doesn't work like that. If you don't want people to question other people's sanity, then you need to have a way of actually getting help to people who are mentally unstable. And we know that social media, for a fact, is not good for people who are mentally unstable. It's very easy to trigger people. It's very easy for people to get very, very upset, and it's very easy for people to dehumanize the other people on the site or utilizing your system. Twitter, you know that you have a problem with your report system, with people sending death threats, with people being able to abuse your report systems for bullying and cyber stalking. This is not going to help the problems that your website has and garners by being what it is. Are there ways to fix those problems? There's going to be some solutions to ease it. Are you ever going to get rid of it entirely? Probably not, but get your shit together.
Yeah,
Not
this isn't
this.
even a
This is just,
band-aid.
hey,
This
this
is
is
not even a band-aid to me.
patronizing.
Yeah, this
No,
this
this
is
just
this is
makes it
demeaning,
worse.
I think. Yeah, I
Right.
think so. I
This is
mean, like
lemon.
Billionaire said, it makes people resentful. And that's exactly
Right.
the term when I was trying to think of it. It makes people more resentful, and it exacerbates the problems. Especially look at the last one, dummy value. Okay, I call them a dummy variable, but a dummy value is the same thing.
If you're
I'm sorry,
insulted
but
by the word dummy, I'm going to laugh at you.
exactly. Look, anybody who knows anything about programming has used the term dummy variables before. I mean, it's just a dummy value is something that you all have to learn in programming. It's
The
not
entire
necessarily a placeholder.
the
But
entire Hello World program that we know in every freaking language we've ever learned, we've learned how to write Hello World. That's a dummy program. It doesn't do anything useful. Spending $10,000 on a computer in 1980 to say hello world was not what you wanted to do. Like, that's not why you bought the computer. It was cute. It confirmed the
actually, it was
computer
right.
was
10
it,
print, hello world, 20 go to 10.
right.
That was like learning programming 101.
It's a dummy program. It's a dummy value. It doesn't really perform some useful function other than to entertain you. But sometimes you need a placeholder value, which is different than a dummy value. A dummy value is something to fill in for something, whereas a placeholder value is it's more of a variable that's going to actually hold the result later, right? Like a zero is a placeholder. It's not a dummy.
Yeah,
It's not a dummy holder. It's a placeholder.
yeah, but
This
a
is like
placeholder,
when
like I said,
people went
well,
from
hang on. A placeholder to me is something where you set, okay, again, back in the day when you had a certain amount of memory,
X.
you had to say,
X is a placeholder.
yeah, because but
Dummy
you had,
value would
okay,
be 3.
but here's the thing: you had to assign certain amount of bits to a certain structure. You had a D word, double variable. So you had to say, look, do I want to have this that 4-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit? Because you were very, very tight on memory, so you didn't want to allocate more bits than you needed at the time. So you didn't want to use a double word if you didn't have to. You could only use a word, and so you had to say to the computer, okay, this is what I want to give it. A dummy value doesn't allow for any of that. It's just a two parity thing. It's either 1 or 0. So it didn't have to have a 4-bit zero zero zero
Right.
zero 1111. It didn't need any of that word or double word,
And
which is 16-bit word. You just say, I want a dummy variable that can only hold 0 or 1. That's all you needed. And the computer knew what that meant.
right. And then
That's all
like
it was.
a placeholder would be the data you stick into that structure so that it makes like because
Yes.
you create a structure. Great. There's just random shit in memory until you put something else in there. So you need a placeholder. You could fill it with zeros. You can fill it with
You could write the whole thing with zeros, right? And those are all now placeholders, even though
right.
that's putting a dummy variable in there, right?
Right.
If I do a write and I say, look, I want to data allocate a certain amount of memory, and I wipe it with all of the zeros, I've now put a dummy variable in all those
All those bytes.
memories. Oh yeah, well, I'm trying to think of the memory locations, right? All those bytes
Right.
are now going to be zero, but they're really holding anything, right? They're not placeholders for anything.
Well,
So I don't
they're
know. I
placeholders
mean, they
for
kind of
whatever
are,
you're going
maybe,
to
but
put. It depends on whether you put something in them in the future. But now we're getting pedantic.
yeah.
So processor flags
But
for
they're
the
not the same thing. I'm sorry.
8086. The processor status flags for the 8086. The S flag is if the most significant bit is 1.
Wait. Okay, I was going to try to guess these, but yeah. So the
Z-
significant bit is 1. Okay.
Right, right. So it indicates a negative value, right? So if
Okay.
the most
You're implying
significant
that
bit is
something is
1.
insignificant.
No, it's all significant.
Triggering.
It's just how much of it is more significant than the other part of it.
How
If the
dare
total,
you?
if something is 0, then the Z flag is set. If the
Next,
That's a
you're
Z
gonna
flag.
start saying. Next, you're gonna start saying that the male plug is less than equal to the female plug.
no, they're complementary, but they're equal. You need them both, otherwise it wouldn't work. That's a whole
Oh
sex.
no! Now you're against gay people.
No, I'm not really. Then there's the there's the AC, which is the when you're doing a word arithmetic versus a byte arithmetic, it's the carry flag between the lower byte and the upper byte. Then there's the P, which is the parity flag,
Parity. Yeah.
which tells you whether
That's
a
the
number
first
is
bit of it.
odd or even. Basically, that's what that means.
The parity flag, if I remember, you have 8 bits. So you have 7 bits that has the information, then you have the 1 parity.
Right. Well,
So
yeah,
there's 7 bits plus 1 parity.
But in more general parlance, it's whether the whole byte is odd or even, because the
Odd or even,
ones,
okay.
the 2 to the 0 power place is what's going to determine whether it's odd or even. All odd numbers have a 1 added to them because it's base 2.
Yes.
And then CY is the actual carry out bit. So if you're doing either multi-word addition or you just want to detect overflow, that's your man there. And then there's overflow, is only when a signed operation is too large to fit. So if you signs are weird in computers, like sign numbers. It's the two's complement. If you know anything about how the tens complement, you can actually use tens complement in base 10 to do the same thing. It's a little bit weird. It's weird if you do it in base 10, but it does result in working subtraction by adding numbers, which is how it works.
Yeah, I
in
don't
computer.
remember any of that. I just remember like working with I had a Z80 microprocessor and certain types of computers you can actually set the flags manually.
Well, there's some
But
flags you have to set. Like I said, you have to set the carry bit so that if you're subtracting a negative or subtracting a bigger number than what you're like, you have to borrow in. That
like
way you
8
know
minus
you
9.
right. You had to borrow something in to get that to work. Otherwise, you wouldn't get That's a sanity check. You wouldn't get a sane result. Oh my god, it would be an insane result.
Triggering. But anyways,
Somebody's asking. It starts with Saturn was asking, do you think Twitter would give you a pass when it comes to context, such as it being okay to use these terms when talking about computers? No, because Twitter doesn't understand context, and algorithms that Twitter uses and YouTube uses aren't complex or good enough to be able to properly recognize context. So,
yeah,
like, I'm
the
about to get
fact
us
that people are just
demonetized.
don't get us demonetized that quickly. But here's the thing:
I'm gonna.
people
What do you mean
recognize
that
that this was
quickly?
virtue signaling. Oh yeah, I guess we're
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
done. Go ahead. Uh, but people recognize that
There's a big.
this
So
was just virtue signaling.
yeah. here's an example of what you're going to run into with the problem with dummy value. Once upon a time, people who had legs that didn't work were called cripples. People got offended, so we changed the terminology and started calling them physically disabled. Well, after a little while, people started getting irritated about that. I don't want to say they because it wasn't necessarily the people who were actually disabled. And then people started getting upset by that, and so it's been changed to handicapped or handy capable or any plethora of things that it gets changed to. But the concept hasn't changed. What they're talking about hasn't changed. And changing the terminology hasn't helped those people. What has helped those
Correct.
people? Advancements in technology, better understanding of the concepts, and being more understanding of those people and their needs. So, like adding ramps to places, but adding a ramp to every store to make it wheelchair accessible was about making things wheelchair accessible. It didn't matter whether that person was considered crippled, disabled, or um,
Do you think a
handicapped.
lot of
It didn't
them
matter.
you think a lot of them actually find it offensive? Because I think that I would. I mean, look, if I was in a wheelchair, if somebody called me cripple, I wouldn't bother me in the least. I mean, yeah, I'm cripple. I mean, that's what these are not offensive terms to me. And I think a lot of people are probably the
I've
same way, and
noticed.
they don't want to have these placated terminology to make them feel
Yeah,
better. When
it's
it to me it sounds
pandering, and
demeaning.
it's being
It's pandering.
It
Yeah.
is in some cases. I think that I've noticed that the people who tend to get offended the most on the largest scale. Obviously, this is my experience.
Are
This
the ones
is
that the term
not
doesn't apply to. That's where we get offended.
well, not necessarily just that, but the people who are that entitled or are that protected that live in those bubbles. So there are people who have physical or mental disabilities who, because of like who their parents are or how they've grown up in such a protected manner that they get offended if they aren't treated in a very very specific way. And these are the people, and this doesn't apply only to people who have mental or physical disabilities. These are Karens.
Yeah,
These are the entitled
by the way, I
people
was just going to say
who
that too. I was like, it sounds like Karen's. People that with
these
this
are the
weird sense of
Karens.
entitlement. This is Karen. Yeah, it's Karen's.
Right, where it's like, no, the world should bow and people need to pander to me. People need to treat me the way I should be. If you go around treating everybody that they should be treated like they're special, well, when everybody's special, nobody is. Right? So if you're in a situation like, um, just because you have your special kids or you have special needs, are you sure that they need to be treated like they're invalids? Because you shouldn't treat anybody like they're an invalid. Because why would you? You treat them like they're a human. If I can't tell a joke about somebody losing their leg, what does that tell you? That people who don't have legs or have lost a leg can't take a joke? They're children and they should be treated like children? Why?
It's offensive to them. I think. I think in a way that they just treating them as if they're not capable of having any kind of humor. In fact, a lot of the same people that I associate with we all seem to have this dark humor. I have gallows humor. I have dark humor. I find nothing wrong with that because it's a coping mechanism. People use humor to cope with types of subjects that normally are very difficult to process. Things like death, even a dark comedy, right? By the way, can we call it a dark comedy? Is that racist to call it comedy, a black comedy, or a dark comedy? Of course not, right?
If you say
It's something
dark
that we
now and not
understand as a
automatically.
comedy dealing with these topics, right? What's that?
There's a serious issue that I think happens due to social media, and it has to do with segregation. But watch now, people are like, "Oh, you mean racism?" No, I don't mean racism. I mean segregation of countries. Um, People in America live in such a this is America. There's only America and not America. And the thing is they don't acknowledge or understand that not America are other places that exist. So if somebody uses a term, they're not that term that they're using doesn't necessarily have the same history that this term has in your country. So when you people say that, oh well, black people are the only slaves, therefore it's a black term. No, black people weren't the only slaves and aren't the only slaves. And guess what? People can be slaves based on something that has nothing to do with their skin tone. Sex trafficking is a really good example.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of Americans do kind of have that
Americans are.
America-centric
I've noticed.
approach.
Yeah, there's an American centric mentality and educate. I think it's built into the education system. Not necessarily built in on purpose, but it's part of the way America is educated to care about America and only America, and not have a very good broader knowledge of other places and other places' histories, or even to the idea that those other places exist, to have that pause to be like, oh, well, maybe these terms don't mean that to these other people. A good word, for example, is cunt. It does not mean the same thing. It's not a big deal in Australia. It's not a big
Australia,
deal
yeah,
in
it's a term
England
of
or New
endearment down
Zealand.
there. Yeah.
But if you say it to a Karen in Walmart, America, they're gonna
You'll get
flip
arrested.
out. You're gonna get
You'll be
arrested.
talking.
They're gonna pull a
You'll
gun
be
on you.
asked for your manager.
Right. There are people who were freaking out over the term, what was it? It was like, it's like this what is it? The Spanish word for black on Crayola crayons?
Negro.
Cancel Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah, cancel Spanish. Exploratory Minds Project for Five says to quote, holy crip, he's a crapple. Peter Griffin from Family Guy.
It's funny too because like you watch these videos and I watch them on Twitter and stuff, and you'll see these Karens going nuts, and they are the ones that are racist. They are the ones that are prejudiced. They are the ones that are bigoted. They are the ones that are homophobic. They're the ones that are transphobic. They are legitimate, the embodiment of the people that most of us find to be morally reprehensible. But the thing about the Karens is they're open about it. They seem to flaunt it.
Some
Like, I
guys,
am
yeah.
so special. I am privileged. I'm going to just be out there
Entitled.
promoting the worst part of America. I was talking
Well,
to
the
somebody the other day, and I was trying to tell them that, look, over the years, you think America has made progress, and it come to find out that maybe we haven't made that much progress. But what it is we're shown things now that maybe 40 years ago weren't as shown through the media, right? So
oh yeah,
the systemic
absolutely.
racism has
Social
always
media has
existed.
done a lot.
Absolutely, these Karens have always existed. I've been in retail. I've dealt with them before.
I wouldn't
They are
call
not a new
Karen
phenomenon.
systemic though. I wouldn't call Karen
No, no.
systemic.
Well, they're not systemic. Systemic racism is
They're
systemic.
racist.
Yeah, but like I said, Karens have always existed. They just gave them a name, but these people have been around. But what you see more is on social media, them being exposed more, being given
Sure.
airtime. Which, by the way, I'm all for. I get a kick watching those people, because I think to myself,
Some of them are too cringe for me. I'm just like,
but it shows people this is what we're trying to move away from. This Twitter engineering
right.
stuff, this doesn't help. That doesn't do anything.
No.
What helps is saying, oh, look, you have this entitled person who's a racist bigot. Let's show them to people and say, look, this is how not to be. This is
Well,
not what we want for our country here. That's how you eliminate racism.
yeah. Yeah, this leads into a whole other problem that I think is a large problem. When you do things like what Twitter has done, Twitter isn't doing things that would actually help. But
Of
now they
course
feel
not.
like they've helped. Now they're like,
Yeah,
look, we
no,
did a
no.
thing. Here you go, pat you on the head, go about your day.
That's
No,
what
no,
a
you
lot of it
didn't.
is, right?
You didn't. You didn't help
Oh,
any.
we've done
So when you
something
have
good.
people, right? So when you have people that are calling people transphobic or calling people racist over things that are not transphobic and things that are not racist, these people, that this group, and sometimes it's very large groups of people, think that they're helping, think that they've done something, but not only have they made the problem worse, but they haven't actually helped in any way. This hasn't helped these people. This hasn't changed policies to make policies better. All you did was shut down one person and
Yep.
made life
And
bad
by
for
the
that
way,
one person, and potentially
if
made it more difficult to have conversations that would actually help these people.
if you read
Actually,
the
Ghoul,
tweets
I sent
underneath,
you something on Twitter. If I sent you something on Discord. If you could pull it up, now would be a good time. Or I sent it to you on
if
Discord.
you read the
Just to
tweets
make sure.
below the Twitter engineering, I would say that the
Mm,
way more than vast majority of them agree with us. By the way, my
okay.
tweet has more likes than Shoe on Head.
I
She
saw
has
that.
9.2K minus 10. Sorry, Shoe on Head. I adore Shoe on Head. She's a white whale. I would love to have her on as a guest. I think her videos are actually pretty funny. But she doesn't know who the hell I
I liked
am.
her
She
one
probably never
about the
will.
organ. I like I liked her one about the art. Where are the organs?
Oh, I think
There
she's
you go,
talented. I
Crush.
really, honest to God, do, but she doesn't know who I am.
Thank you. So I saw this on Twitter last night, and I thought it was pretty appropriate. Steve, you want to read that one out?
I can't read that. I can read the bottom, but I can't read the top.
You can't read the top? Okay.
No, can't see
I
it.
will, yeah, I'll pull it up 1 second.
It
I gotta
says,
pull it up again. Oh,
it
Fool's
says,
got it.
me and other people are happy that our country is being represented in video games. It's got a picture of Mario
with sombrero.
with a sombrero, and Zelda with, I'm not even sure what style that is, but it's just, it's just all
Other
this
cultures.
culture co-opting, I would call it, because oh my gosh. And then the whale comes along and takes the bait because they're on the end of a stick like a carrot stick, and the shark comes along and says some anti-racist, in quotes, American group saying we are offended, just to ruin it all.
Well, that's
So
a
it's
lot of groups
essentially,
do. They
yeah,
just feign outrage.
it's a meme. It's a meme commentary about how, like, hey, we're actually getting Pixar made a movie called Coco, and it's about the Day of the Dead, and it's about the afterlife in Mexico and how it's viewed, and or Moana. When Moana came out, it had a lot of Hawaiian culture and a lot of, now was it perfect? No, of course it wasn't. It's not supposed to be. The Little Mermaid wasn't a perfect adaptation. Of course, it wasn't supposed to be a perfect adaptation. It wasn't supposed to get all of those legends exactly right. It's supposed to be a culmination. But people were out there crying racism, except that the cast were Hawaii. Like, The Rock isn't a white guy. There was no cultural appropriation going on, even in the casting. But people were, there's this outrage culture going on that were like, cancel Moana and cancel Coco because they're utilizing other people's cultures, telling stories from other people's culture to people who otherwise wouldn't know anything about the culture isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, the whole Disney appropriation things. I think people have lost their minds on it. Matter of fact, somebody had posted
I did
something
get a bit of a
where
kick about people saying that, like, when people were going on about, oh, a black character should be voiced by a black actress, and then a lot of the times it was a black actress, but then
yeah,
on
or
top
well,
of
like
it, somebody was like, oh,
Trey
well, then I
Parker
guess we
from
need to
South
think
Park.
Little Mermaid needs to be white, I guess.
Yeah, Trey Parker. Well, in the original story, but Trey Parker said he's not going to do Mr. Hanky anymore because he's not a piece of shit, so he can't voice
Right.
Mr. Hanky. But I saw something where this person, college student girl, got offended because of the type of Chinese or Asian outfit that people. Actually, it was Oriental, right? Asians are considered
Oriental.
for people. Oriental is like for non people, right? So like and Oriental rug, right?
So the dress, so the dress would be
So,
Oriental,
so
and
the
the
dress,
person
yeah,
would
but
be Asian.
but she got offended. But the dress she was talking about was completely different. It wasn't the actual dress that was actually being shown was something from the 1920s that were used in like speakeasies or something. But it was just like they
Right.
had to like have this feign outrage, like, oh my god, it's cultural appropriation. Don't be changing my native garb, but it wasn't even actually native garb.
They weren't
So
referring
I
to
think a
that
lot of
thing,
people are just
yeah.
looking for something to get outraged about, right?
That'd be like saying, hey, nobody's allowed. You can't put a Japanese girl in a French-made outfit.
Yes, you can.
Good, good luck.
Absolutely.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Have you seen maid cafes?
Well, you're
They're basically
Canadian. What culture do you have? What is Canadian? I don't even know what Canadian culture is.
sweaters and
What's
hockey
a
sticks.
yeah? I
Hockey
was gonna
sticks.
say
I'm,
what's
I'm
what's
only
a
allowed to
traditional
wear.
Canadian garb? Something with the maple leaf on it. That's it.
Okay, so that's the thing. It would depend on what you're talking about. Are you talking about Native Americans and Inuit? Because then it would be whatever outfits would apply to those peoples. But if you're talking about, like, after becoming Canada, then you would still be wrong to wear a hockey jersey because hockey isn't even our that's not our sport. That's not our national sport. Our national sport is lacrosse.
I don't play either.
Tim Hortons cup? Can I only wear Tim Hortons cups? I don't know.
But
The
anyways,
thing
though, we are
is when
coming up to
you
2 hours mark.
are you allowed as an American or a Canadian if you're not native, if you're not part of the original, like the Iroquois
Absolutely, you can wear
tribes,
whatever you
or
want. I
well,
think you can
no.
wear
I'm not
something.
saying you shouldn't. I'm saying like, do you have a culture if you're not the original people from that place? I'm German/Irish, and if you follow my, sorry, Scottish, but if you follow my heritage back far enough, apparently we're gypsies. What the fuck does that mean? Right? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I've got no
I can
gypsy
only
in me.
dress up as Esmeralda from Disney because that's not appropriation, I guess.
Somebody asked what was my response to Twitter. What I said was
Oh yeah, what did you
this.
actually say?
Didn't he actually show it?
No.
Oh, and I gotta go
No, I
find it again.
didn't. But let me go grab it real quick.
Yeah, he'll show it for you.
It's like literally right under it. So.
So the Canadian outfit would be like a flannel shirt. Have you ever seen Supernatural? What Dean and Sam wear is basically traditional Canadian garb. Flannel and jeans.
Are they both Canadian?
No, the Winchesters? Or you mean the actors?
No.
The actors, no. No, they're not. Not as far as I'm aware. But most of Supernatural is actually filmed in British Columbia. Even though it doesn't take place in British Columbia. Obviously.
Well, I know we are coming up to the 2 hour mark, and I am very tired. I do want to get some rest tonight. Like I said, I'll probably have that hangout tonight on Stellarium or sometime tomorrow. It depends. But man, I am like beat. So anything from the live audience that we got to address? Like I said, it's been a while since we had a caffeine corner. My apologies. We do have over and under.
We should do a call-in show soon.
Well, I mean, I liked your idea, which is very far and few between, but I liked your idea about Objectively Dan, where we had like 2 hours, first hour having kind of a discussion, and the second hour having like a Q&A. That actually works. I think that'd be awesome.
I think that'd be a great idea if he's down to come. But we should probably do a Q&A or do a call-in anyway, because we were gone for so long and there's a lot going on. It looks like we're going to be working on Steve's going to be working on some math tutorials, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I have a handful of things that are in the works, and hopefully next week, that time of the month, we'll be back. I'm going to be double-checking with the ladies just to see. We've got a lot on the back burner to talk about. I have a handful of things that I'm looking at reviewing and taking a look at. One of them being that Batty Hovind guy, because I'm like, what are you?
I don't even know. I was warned against him ages ago, and I should have listened. I had a 10-minute conversation with him. No, literally, I had a 10-minute conversation with him, and now he's obsessed with me for like 2 weeks. Whatever. I don't talk about him. I don't give a damn about him. He's absolutely
that'll be on
obsessive personality trait, which is scary to me.
Yeah, that'll be on my
channel. When you have a 10-minute conversation with somebody and they fuck up everything, they get everything wrong, and try to change everything that happened, and then get obsessed by you for the next couple of weeks, I don't bother talking to those kind of people. That's what I consider to be a dangerous personality type.
I'm mostly curious.
Knock them out. Let me be obsessed by you.
Well, yeah, I'm not interested in necessarily correcting whatever he is saying. I'm more interested in seeing who this guy is, where he came from, and what he kind of does, because I looked into a little bit of his stuff, and what he's been doing with you seems to be conducive of what he's done in the past. So I don't think you'd ever get to a point where you'd say everything that he got wrong in 20 minutes or less. And then it would just be 20 minutes of the word yes flashing on the screen. But like, just to find out like who this guy is. And
he's been obsessed by Ken Hovind for ages. He I mean, legit. But like I said, I don't deal with it. When you're at that level of insanity, I just completely cut you out of it. Completely.
Yeah, that's only why I want to like kind of
all yours, man.
I just kind of want to see who this guy was, where he interacted with you, where he came into the community, and why he's gone again. So, Boy of Ink for Two said, "Is it out of season April Fool's joke?"
Yeah, that's basically what I said to Twitter. Here's the 15-second recap of what everything got wrong was, for some strange reason in his mind, he thought I was telling him, you should believe me when people make false claims about me, because somebody has made this really stupid claim that I claimed that nuke school was equivalent to a PhD, with, by the way, no one ever showed evidence.
That's the thing we joked. That's what we joked about at the beginning of the episode.
But his position was, that he should believe me, and I never said anything of that sort. What I told him was,
No.
first, you didn't ask the person for evidence. He didn't, and then eventually he did after I said something. But he says there's no way we can determine what is true or not. And I'm like, yeah, you can. You can ask somebody for evidence for it. If you don't find, they give you no evidence, then why would you even allow them to make false accusations in your group? That's my argument. Simple as that. Nothing. Any rational person would find the same thing, right? If I have a Facebook group too, right? The Great Debate Community. And one of those things that you happens in that group is if you actually make a claim, you need to show some evidence for it. We've had that as a long established fact, right? Bullinator was a mod. I think he still is. This is how we run that group. And so if somebody makes a claim on something and they provide absolutely no evidence for it, that post gets removed, right? Especially when it's dealing with
I might bring Mr. Serious. I might bring Mr. Serious on my channel to kind of look at some of his blogs and see the kind of person that like we're dealing with and where it kind of went. Just because I think it makes a really good example of things just going south like instantaneously. I think it's just an interesting little case.
It's all documented. I mean, look, you could actually read what happened. I mean, I'm not even
exaggerating. I've got it all.
He legitimately lost his mind over like 10 minutes of conversation because somebody made a false claim about me. I said, where's the evidence for it? They had none, zero, legit none. And he wouldn't remove the post or even censor the guy. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to bother with this kind of crap group. And I left. That was it. All that happened in 10 minutes. The guy has been like fixated on me for the last like 2 weeks. And by the way, like I've said, a very dear friend of mine who I have the utmost respect for, warned me about his obsessive personality type ages ago. And again, I should have listened because that dude is just mental.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think standards need to be upheld better than they are. And when you break the standards and start, like in a discussion, I don't know, for example, accusing people of things, and they can demonstrate immediately that they didn't do that thing, maybe don't jump to the accusations. Maybe don't assume that the person is doing that thing and ask, hey, that's not quite what I said, or clarify. And then when you do, own up and apologize for it. If you do.
And by the way, other people watch what happened in real time. Matter of fact, people were actually on Twitter going, hey, Beatty, whatever. He's like, dude, you're just absolutely lying about this. We watched what happened. We were there. Steve's relating it exactly what happened, and you're full of crap. You can't even twist it around. I mean,
loaded debate questions
see what happened.
Seems to be that guy's loaded debate question seems to be that guy's MO.
Right.
But I'll look into it and we'll talk about it.
And also he's trying to like goat Dr. Rana and ReasonsToBelieve. They want nothing to do with him. Absolutely nothing to do with him. And he's like, oh well, I'm going to be on the show. No, you're not going to be on the show. Matter of fact, all these people are going to be blocked eventually. It's just a matter of time. But he for some reason thinks that like Fuzz Rana wants to have a debate with him. No, he doesn't. Never will happen. But yeah, why these people think that they have such entitlement? Oh, I'm entitled to have we have open discussions and agree to argue. That's what, we can talk to Steve about whatever.
Therefore you're entitled.
We're not there. Yeah, we're not there for them. Yeah.
Well, no, that's not how okay, well,
that's not how the show is going to work.
Having something like the Great Debate Community and having an open forum to discuss things does not mean that you're entitled to a conversation with that person. Hell, correct. We have people in our Patreons that are paying us that think they're entitled to our time. And it's like, no, you don't pay people to be friends with you. That's not how it works. Unless that's part of that person's Patreon, you've gone too far. That's not cool.
It's actually part of mine. I mean, my Patreons, it is part of my Patreon thing, is that I do get back to them. In fact, if you're a Patreon, if you're a member, and you message me, I can't imagine anyone out there right now say that I didn't get back to them. I
have people that I have not gotten back to. I have one person that left because I didn't get back to them. I didn't get back to them on purpose because they were quite inappropriate. Like regularly asking.
You have every right to. Yeah.
Right. Now they didn't do anything sexual. I don't want to like imply that. What I mean is it was inappropriate. They were imposing on my time. They felt entitled to me or whatever I was doing. They wanted additional free art and they were like, well, this I pay you, so this. And I was just like, absolutely not. And then I just stopped. Because I was like, I don't care. No.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm fortunate. I've never had it happen except for once. That $50 guy, which I've already explained a million times. He was actually, what people don't understand is that guy legit harassed two dear friends of mine, and basically took interviews with them and spliced them and Frankenstein cut them to make it appear out of context. And they were pissed.
Well, and what I've offered
they
is
didn't want anything to do with them.
a Discord Q&A. Like, I will set a hangout time for people, but no, this is not an individual one-on-one thing. You're not paying to have a relationship with me, whether that be a friendship or whatever. That's not how it works. On the other hand, unless that's explicitly said or part of it, but don't try to impose yourself on other people. That's just not a cool thing to do.
Yeah,
but
I agree with you.
I think if we want to wrap up, I think the lesson we really learned here is that don't be an entitled piece of shit. And stuff like this, like what Twitter's doing and virtue signaling like that, detracts from the problem. If you're doing something because it makes you feel better and makes you feel like you've helped the community by shutting other people down and shutting shit down, that's not helping. Cancel culture doesn't actually help anything. Exposing somebody for being racist and then them getting shut down on their own for being racist is fine, but you don't need to actively be harassing people who, especially if they're not being racist.
Yeah, and that's the funniest thing. The vast majority of these accusations that are thrown out there for people that are saying, oh, this person is racist, this person's a bigot, this person's transphobe, are usually the people that are absolutely not. Because the people that I've seen that are bigots, that are racist, transphobe, they're actually very proud of it. I'm not saying it's all like that, but a lot of them are. Those are the people that needs to have the attention. Those are the people that need to be shown, hey, look, this is what it's like to be a shitty person. Stop being shitty people. Simple as that. Stop being shitty people. But anyways, we do got to go. Thank you guys for watching. Again, we'll be doing these. I guess we're back every Monday now. Hopefully.
We're back every Monday now.
Yay!
Yay!
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Anything for us to get out? Oh, that game's okay.
No, other than
we have an episode on.
Other than in 57 minutes, go to MC Tunes channel. There's going to be a Gleam and whoever this person is. It's Gleam and The Plain Truth versus Conspiracy Cats and MC Tunes. So it'll be fun if you're into those kind of things. Jared Buto, 82 Productions, will be moderating that.
We have an episode on sea lioning, Emmy. If you're interested, go and see if you can find that episode. I'll be back probably mostly next week with stuff. I've been trying to do some recording, but I have failed miserably. I do have a bunch of neat art that's going to be going out on Patreon soon. Some of it has been making its way onto Twitter, so you can go find and follow me there and all that good stuff.
All right. Bye, all.
Bye.